Hi, everybody, and welcome to our special Christmas edition of the Stephen and Oliver show. And we hope that you are enjoying the festive period and everything's going well for you. What we thought is we don't want to go too heavy and too deep on a Christmas episode, but at the same time, we don't want it to just be a waste of time, frivolous bit of fun, because there's loads of stuff like that around at Christmas time, isn't there? So we wanted to have a tone of seriousness around it. And the real focus on this is just being aware. So we're calling it Christmas awareness, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and I see it every year, which really, I don't know, grinds my gears a little bit. So I'll come on to that in a moment, but I thought before I go off on a rant, let's see what Stephen thinks of when he thinks of Christmas, and when he thinks of it as an individual and also from a business perspective. Whatever is relevant, what comes to mind for you around Christmas time?
The first thing that really comes to mind is my faith. You know, I'm a Christian, and Christmas to me is about that belief and having faith and coming together as a family and coming together to worship the Lord. What has been given to us because of that, and our the way in which we're connected. I often think about my ancestors and what it must have been like for them, you know, all those years at this time of the year. So that they're the first things that comes to mind is my faith and how important that is to me and how I am here because of that. And then the second thing that comes to me, which is another quite personal thing, is that a lot of people celebrate this period that have lost loved ones. I think it's always one of those periods where, because it's a period of heightened excitement and enjoyment, we forget that there's people that actually it's an absolute nightmare for as well. Actually, they could quite easily, skip it because of the memories. And even for those people, what I would say is about thinking about, the positive memories and the good times, as painful as that is. And then before I hold a hand over to you, because I can feel your heat from where I'm sat, the other thing it makes me think about is people doing too much, whether that's financially or their time. I can remember a time where I would literally feel compelled to travel all around the country to see as many family and friends as possible at Christmas. And the pressure that I put myself under was so bad, I'd always get ill. Because I'd literally put myself under so much pressure to be everywhere. And, just say you don't need to be everywhere. And financially, we know that people just go to town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then guess what? The depression hits in January. You get to mid-Jan and it's like, oh my gosh. So, they're the things that come to mind straight away. We can elaborate on all of those subject matters, but they're the things that come to mind. But the first one really is my faith and being a Christian and coming together and singing and carols and hymns and, the Spirit of the Lord.
Yeah, and that's a really thing that's I think is really important for people to think about, because as you well know, that's not something that's really sort of come home for me. But at the same time, I'm really respectful of it, because that's the whole reason that it exists. And regardless of your views on it, that is what it's about. So we need to be very respectful of that. Equally, there's plenty of people that we know in workplaces who have different faiths, and so if we need to be respectful of that. So one of the things that I always find challenging is the sort of whole bar humbug thing, because you touched on this quite nicely. So moving away from faith, because those with it will understand why it's important to them, and you just need to be respectful of that. That's just a fact, and I don't think we need to dwell on that in any more depth. But be careful about this whole bar humbug thing, because exactly your point. You do not know what shit and trauma Christmas may have represented for other people. So maybe they have a damn good reason to be down. Now, it's not healthy for them to be like that. They need to be helped out of it. But just picking on them and calling them, like saying bar humbug and saying, oh, it's Christmas, how can you be like this? Well, look, if you haven't taken the time to find out, and if the person's not willing to be open, just think for a second, is there something I'm missing? Because I've seen it far, far too many times when I'm in the know about stuff, but also kind of sworn to secrecy, as is the way with the trade. And then I'll see some interactions and I'll be like, oh, if you knew. And if those people did know the reason why this isn't such a great time of year for somebody else, they would never be doing and saying the things that they are saying. So I think that's the first thing. Can you be sure around this time, if you're being not mean, but if you're kind of picking on things or poking fun at people, do you know enough to be sure that you're not actually making their situation worse? Then linked to that, it's not really a Christmas thing as such, but it just really magnifies that point about excess, but that also that position about how things are presented, that sort of perfect picture piece. I mean, it is on social media, for example, it is everywhere. So again, first and foremost, thinking about those people who maybe would enjoy having a Christmas with their family but aren't able to because of circumstances outside of their control, whatever that might be. But also, are you being honest? Are you being authentic? Are you? I'm aware of many families who have the perfect family portrait and pictures, but there is all sorts of problems behind those four walls. So do you need to do it? Why do you need to do it at that particular point? What point are you trying to prove? And then the final piece is that, and hopefully this isn't you listening now, but that whole worry I have with debt. But also, if you're an individual or a family who've overextended yourself, please don't suffer with it. If you have overextended yourself or you fear you might be getting close to that, take action sooner rather than later. Talk to people about it. If you feel you can't speak to those closest, nearest and dearest to you because they might not react well, there's plenty of support and help out there, because I'm always worried about, you touched on it, depression and obviously where that can lead and the impact that might have on individuals, on their families, on their friend circles, but also on the businesses that they might be engaged in or even running. That can be a really severe thing if you've gone too far. So I know this sounds a bit heavy and we don't want to be too intense with these episodes, but I think it's important to be real. I think it's important to challenge. That's what we do. That's our job. And therefore, I don't think it's helpful to just think that Christmas is a wonderful time of year for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it is for you, great. And I don't want to crap on that. But at the same time, just think about the people around you. Do you need to be inadvertently rubbing things in people's faces? No. Do you inadvertently need to be making people feel worse about something they already feel bad about? No. So for me, it's just a warning shot to people about just being aware of their surroundings, the people they've got, the things they're doing, the issues they maybe cause themselves, and not suffering in silence with it, because I understand the pressures. I definitely understand the pressures. And you know, I'm not entirely sure what everybody's financial situation is going to be like for the next few months. So it's a really, really relevant one this year. Yeah. So I know it feels a bit deep and heavy, but what does that trigger in you when we start talking about all these things?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult time for some, and especially those that, you know, might not have family around them, those that might be, you know, working away. I think it is tough. And I think sometimes businesses don't do enough, in my opinion, on the run up to Christmas period, in terms of, you know, thinking about, you know, I always think about the hospitals and people that have to work on Christmas Day and Boxing Day, etc. But it's almost like this is also an opportunity for businesses to do things a bit differently and give people that time and space. I think sometimes we don't, and actually the productivity goes down anyway, and it's actually costing you more money. So I think businesses need to look at Christmas on a whole and say, right, how can I get the most productivity out of this period? What is it that I need to do? And it might be that you give people extended leave. It might be that you do things slightly differently because there's not going to be people around to sort of answer that phone call or do that job, but just think of it as a period. Yeah. And for me, you know, I spent many years in retail in my early part of my career, and Christmas was always such a tiring period for us, you know, because we got very little time off. We'd work more or less the whole time through. And what was really interesting is the business sort of management team that thought about it ahead of time always got the better responses. The ones that didn't, you know, everything was a bit flat because of it. So I would say, you know, look at the period. And I like to think, you know, once you get past bonfire night, which is, you know, the 5th of November in my mind, from the 6th of November, that period sort of starts then and it sort of rolls through till the end of the first week in January. And it's looking at the whole period of the business and going, right, how can I make this period as productive as possible? What is it that I need to do to break it down and make it a bit more digestible? One, I want people to enjoy themselves, but two, we still got a business to run, right? Yeah. I once worked with a company, and this is no word of a lie, where they completely lost so much money over Christmas because they didn't think about how they needed to bill. So they didn't bill at the right time. So actually there was this massive, big gaping hole. So this is why I think we have to plan for it. You have to plan for that period. And it starts much earlier than you think. Much earlier, especially online. It starts much earlier than you think. And then maybe bricks and mortar, it starts a bit later. But it's really businesses to think about it as a period and think about how do we get the best out of that period? How do we get the best out of it from a people perspective? How do we get the best out of it from a client, a customer, consumer perspective? But it's given it that thought from a business perspective. I think businesses cripple themselves and then come middle of January are in a really difficult situation because they haven't thought about the bigger picture. And then the other side to it is I think the word I would use is love. I think Christmas gives us an opportunity really to do things differently, to sort of hold out that olive branch, to sort of, try and, end the year on a high and get ready for a new year. As a Christian, we break bread and we welcome in strangers, at that time frame. If you think about the story of baby Jesus and, Mary and Joseph, it's a time when we can, hold an arm out and invite people in, and where all, manner of people and religions can sort of come together and be one. So I think it's a period where we can sort of look a bit deeper than our nostrils and see, where we can help people. Where I live, there's a lot of older people, and I always worry about this time of year anyway because it's colder, it's harder for them to get out. But it's sparing a thought for people that might need a little bit more help and just looking a bit further in our nostrils at this time of year and seeing what we can do to help people. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really important one, really, with the whole sort of loneliness thing, isn't it? Just, I don't know, from a neighbourly point of view, just making sure that that they're okay, and what can you do? And think, that stuff is kind of can seem a bit out of date and old fashioned, but actually is needed more and more these days. So, and it's interesting you say from the business point of view. I think now is a perfect time to evaluate how that period has gone for you. And we are saying that right now, coming into January being around the corner, is the perfect time to review. Nothing you can do about what's not gone well this year, other than my key phrase I always say, no such thing as failure, only feedback. You can only truly fail when you fail to listen to the feedback. I roll that one out to my clients all the time, and here is a perfect opportunity, because there'll have been stuff that's gone either really, really well, and we want to repeat, or it's gone not so well or really, really badly, which we want to make sure doesn't ever happen again. And perhaps it's exactly as Stephen says, you're going to be planning earlier next year. Do it now. Might as well. Get ready. Get those plans in place. Don't wait till the 5th of November. Wait till the 5th of January and start planning about it, or at least document it, or do something based on what's happened. And internally as well, just think about the communication piece. One of the things I'll finish on is there's this assumption, and this is something I genuinely did not enjoy, was the office Christmas party. Yeah. Are you sure as a company that it is what everybody wants? Are you certain that if you gave them alternative options, they wouldn't necessarily do it? I know that I would have liked to have had whatever was spent on me being able to attend those parties, to have been able to go and do something with my family on the business. Or maybe a smaller group of selected people that I worked with. I would have liked to have gone out with them and their families maybe. But I don't want to be in a room with other people who get out of control and do things that they or I would regret later, and feel uncomfortable, but you felt obliged and you were considered the bar humbug if you didn't do it. Let's just make absolutely sure that it isn't just a small number of people who want this, and that it's the greater collective of people who want to do whatever it is you choose to do around this period, because there's a lot of people who aren't going to want to do it but will feel they can't say no, and you shouldn't have an environment where you can't say no in a workplace. So for me, I think it's just a general piece about have more thought. I feel it's one of these things that just creeps up on everybody every year. Same problems happen, or same challenges happen, or things are repeated, or whatever it is. And let's just see if we can't motivate everybody to be a bit different, be a bit better this time of year. And perhaps if you've listened to this at the right time for you, there's something you've heard that maybe thinks, oh, well, check on Mrs. Jones next door. Or, yeah, I'll have a think, actually. I'll ask everybody what they thought about what we did this year for the office party. Or, you know, that guy is always a little bit miserable at this time of year. Maybe I'll see if I can't find out something about them, reach out to them rather than, you know, scorn them for being so, you know, miserable and giving them black Santa hats and things like that, you know. Just think a little bit more is what I would encourage everybody to do. So that's my 2 pennies worth on it.
And my last thing as a teetotaler is don't put pressure on people that don't drink at this time of year. The amount of people at this time of year that say to me, aren't you just going to have the one? I don't drink alcohol. What bit of it don't you get?
Yeah.
You know,
what? Not any?
No.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just like,
so that I'd like to end on that note, because I think that is one of my biggest hates. And I know people that don't drink. It's such a difficult time of year because everyone's drinking, everyone's expecting you to drink, and you're not drinking. So that, and just to say, you know, like Oliver said, I do think it's a great time to collect your thoughts so that you start the year ready to rock and roll.
Definitely. And I think you've segued into a future episode on drinking, because you don't get me started on that. Oh, that's not one for today. That's going to be very unpopular, particularly this time of year. So we'll cross that bridge in the new year. But I think it's a relevant point, so I'm going to make a note of that one. So anyway, I hope this hasn't brought you down. And if you're already feeling a bit low, I hope it hasn't pushed you over the edge. But in all seriousness, if there's anything that has caused concern, as you know, but I will always repeat it, reach out to me and Stephen. We will be available over the festive period. I mean, I'm not going to say 24/7, but we will be checking messages, we will be available, and we are here to help. That is our primary focus. So if there's anything we can do, do reach out. But otherwise, continue to enjoy the festive period, and we look forward to catching up with you in the new year.